There are moments on live television that nobody prepares for. Moments that fall outside every script, every safety net, every piece of training a host has ever received. Moments where the person holding the microphone has to decide, in real time, in front of millions of people, who they are. This is the story of one of those moments. And this is the story of what Steve Harvey decided. The family came from a small town in rural Georgia. 5 members, the kind of family you see at 4th of July parades and church potlucks and high school graduations where everyone cries and nobody apologizes for it. They were warm people, loud people. The kind of people who fill a room not because they're trying to, but because that's just what they do. The mother's name was Patricia. She was 46 years old, with a wide smile and calloused hands and the specific kind of dignity that comes from a life of quiet, unacknowledged work. She had raised 3 children mostly on her own, while her husband, a man named Marcus, served multiple tours overseas in the United States Army. 2 tours in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan. 14 years of service total before a roadside explosive device took most of the hearing in his left ear and ended his career in uniform. Marcus didn't come on the show that day as a soldier. He came as a husband, as a father. He was standing at the end of the family line, wearing a plain blue shirt and the particular expression of a man who has survived things that don't translate into words, and has made his peace with that. Steve Harvey greeted them with his usual energy, worked his way down the line, got to Marcus. "What do you do?" Steve asked. "I'm retired Army," Marcus said. 14 years. Steve Harvey's response was immediate and total. He took Marcus's hand in both of his and held it for a moment. No jokes, no performance, just a man acknowledging another man. "Thank you," Steve said. "Thank you for your service. That means something real." Marcus nodded once, the way veterans do, accepting the gratitude without wanting to make a scene of it. They started the game. Now, the other family, the family competing against Patricia and Marcus and their children, was from Chicago. And among them was a man named Derek. Derek was loud in the way that some people confuse with confidence. He had opinions about everything and no hesitation about sharing them. Before the game even started, he had already made 3 comments that walked the edge of what's acceptable on a family game show. The producers noticed. The audience noticed. But nobody said anything. Because sometimes you give people the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes you let a person settle into the environment. Derek did not settle. He escalated. It happened during the fast money round. Patricia was at the podium. She had just given an answer that was worth 82 points, and the audience was cheering, and she turned around to her family with her arms out. This pure, uncalculated moment of joy, and from the other side of the stage, Derek called out something. What he said, and understand this is a family show, with children in the audience, with children at home watching, what Derek said was, "What's she so happy about?" Standing up there waving the flag she doesn't even deserve. The audience didn't laugh. The audience went still. Because everyone had heard it, everyone understood what it meant. A man had looked at Patricia, at the wife of a 14-year Army veteran, at a black woman waving her hands in celebration, and told her, on national television, that she didn't deserve to be proud of her country. Patricia's smile didn't fall. Her smile didn't do anything. She just turned around and faced the board, and something in the set of her shoulders said everything. Steve Harvey heard it. Steve Harvey heard every single syllable of it. He turned from the podium. He walked directly to the center of the stage. He did not look at the audience. He did not look at the cameras. He looked at Derek. And in a voice that was completely, terrifyingly calm, he said, "I need you to say that again." Say it again, so everyone in this building can hear exactly what you said. Derek, to his discredit, said it again. Louder, he leaned into it, the way people do when they've decided that their worst impulse is actually a hill they're willing to die on. What happened next has been described, by people who were in that studio, as one of the most electric moments of live television they have ever witnessed. Steve Harvey did not raise his voice. He did not perform anger. He did not give Derek the satisfaction of a reaction that could be clipped and shared and laughed at. He simply said, "This man's wife has stood alone in this country while her husband bled for it. She has raised children and held a family together and gone to sleep every night not knowing if the person she loves most was coming home. And you're going to stand on this stage, on this American stage, in front of this American audience, and tell her she doesn't deserve to be here?" Steve turned to face the audience. "There are people in this country who sacrifice things that most of us will never understand. And the very least, the absolute minimum that we owe them is respect. Not agreement, not gratitude. Respect, just basic human respect." He turned back to Derek. "You need to leave this stage." Derek started to protest. He said something about free speech. He said something about his right to his opinion. Steve Harvey let him finish. Completely did not interrupt, just waited. Then he said very quietly, "You're right. You can have any opinion you want. And I can decide whose opinion gets to be on my show. You're done here. Security will walk you out." The studio erupted. Not in chaos, in something closer to catharsis. The kind of sound an audience makes when something true has happened in front of them. Marcus, standing at the end of the line, put his hand over his mouth. His eyes were wet. Patricia turned around from the podium. She looked at Steve Harvey. And she said, just loud enough to be picked up by the microphones, "Thank you." 2 words, but the way she said them, the weight inside them, they carried years. Now let's talk about what it actually takes to do what Steve Harvey did in that moment. Because it is easy, from a distance, to say, of course you stand up. Of course you say something. Of course you don't let that stand on a national broadcast. It's easy to be brave in theory, but in practice, in the actual moment, with the cameras rolling and the producers in your ear and the audience watching and the network standards and the legal considerations all piling up in real time, in practice, most people flinch. Most people smooth it over. Most people say something diplomatic and move the show along and hope the moment gets buried in the edit. Steve Harvey didn't flinch, and here's what's interesting about why. It's not because he's fearless. Steve Harvey has talked openly about fear throughout his career, about the fear of failure, about the years of doubt, about the nights when he wasn't sure the next day was coming. He stood up in that moment not because he had no fear. He stood up because he had made a decision, years before that day, about what kind of man he was going to be, about which moments he would let pass and which moments he would step into. He had decided, long before Derek walked onto that stage, that when someone in front of him was being diminished, he was going to say something. Every time. Without calculation. Without wondering how it would play. Without checking to see if it was the smart career move. Because his mother had told him, the measure of a man is not how he performs when it's easy. The measure of a man is what he does when it costs him something. In that moment, Steve Harvey paid the price of the moment. He risked the controversy. He risked the segment. He risked the ratings conversation that would follow. And what he bought with that risk was the look on Marcus's face, the gratitude in Patricia's voice, the sound of a studio full of people witnessing something real. the story doesn't end with the broadcast. Derek, after being escorted from the stage, gave a brief interview to a local media outlet. He described the moment as overblown. He said Steve Harvey was grandstanding. The interview received approximately 4,000 views. The clip of Steve Harvey's response received 42 million. 42 million people watched a game show host decide in real time what he stood for. And they recognized something in it. Something they maybe felt themselves but hadn't always acted on. The knowledge that there are moments in life where neutrality is not neutral, where silence is itself a statement, and not the one you want to make. Marcus and Patricia went on to win the Fast Money round. They took home $31,000. But the thing Marcus talked about afterward, the thing he mentioned in every interview, the thing he brought up at his son's graduation speech 2 years later, wasn't the money. It was the moment Steve Harvey looked at a man who had tried to make his wife feel small and said, "No, not here, not today, not on my stage." That's what veterans talk about when they talk about what they served for. Not the abstract, not the political, the specific. The moment when one person stands up for another, at cost to themselves, because it's right. Steve Harvey gave Marcus that moment on national television. And Derek gave Steve Harvey the opportunity to show, to 50 million people, who he actually is. Some gifts come wrapped in the worst packaging imaginable. This was one of them.